This is Karen with newclevelandradio.net, and it is time for Avoid the Maze conversation with Eric Teplitz. And Eric, you just told me something. I guess you're a historian because you mentioned that it's exactly a year ago to this date that I had you on as a guest. And now every month we do this together. There was something about you on that day that when I got off the show, I said, this is a podcaster that I need to continue to talk to because there's something about the information that you share. You don't share it as, hey, I know it all. It's, hey, I've
For sure.
experienced this or I've read about this. And that's what I love. It's like you're not telling me or our listeners, how we should do things, but you're giving us opportunities to like dig deeper and make the changes if we want to make the changes. And I've made quite a few in the last year. Some came from what I call your words of wisdom. And I appreciate that. So happy anniversary.
Wow. Yeah, same here. And thank you so much. That really means a lot to me, what you shared. And I always enjoy our conversations. I always enjoy speaking with you. And my hope is that it is of value to you and to anyone listening. So
Absolutely. So today we're going to talk about, the things that we want to do as individuals, especially as we look at it's the end of 2022. This was supposed to be a phenomenal year. COVID was supposed to be gone. And for many of us, it is, but it's still lingering. It still could be a threat if we're not careful. So 2022, wasn't that perfect year, but come to think of it, have you seen a perfect year in all the
yeah, I was
years
just
you've been
wondering that.
alive? Because I haven't.
It's very subjective, isn't it? Perfect imperfections. I mean, who's to, perfect is such a troublesome concept.
Right.
Perfection, right? First of all, it's in the eye of the beholder, right? And perfect for what? Like, it depends on your outlook, I think. Some hardships that we go through, in a way, perfectly prepare us or give us what we need to blossom in some other way. So I'm not, I think it really, sometimes it takes hindsight to appreciate maybe the quote unquote perfection of something as it occurred.
Well, I know when the year started, my son was in the process of looking for a new opportunity. And the reaction he was getting to his resume in the beginning was not positive. And all I heard for the first month of the year was, oh, I'm going to be living with you and dad for the rest of my life. And it was like, oh, is that so terrible? And then I thought, yeah.
Again, in the eye of the beholder.
Right, exactly. And then we went through all these ups and downs, that he was getting offers, but the offers really weren't good enough for him to actually pack up his bags and move. And then I went through some health challenges, and all of a sudden my health challenges were behind me. And I thought, what a great year this is. And then my husband had a health challenge, which he is coming out of very, very well. And I think you're right. It is in the eye of the beholder, because initially when we're faced with that challenge, we think we're the only one who's hurting. And the reality of it is, we're all being challenged on a daily basis.
Yeah.
Go
I was just
ahead,
going to say,
because I see your
and
eyes rolling.
well, I was just thinking again about this idea about a perfect year, right? And the sort of implication of that is, what is a perfect year where nothing goes wrong? Is a perfect year where we have no challenges, where everything's smooth sailing? Like that might be one person's definition of a perfect year, but there's no growth in that. If everything's
Sure.
easy, then it doesn't mean so much, does it? Like, I mean, certainly speaking from my own experience, it's things tend to be most meaningful when I've had to, you know, uh, when there have been trials and challenges and I've had to overcome things. Like that makes something like if something's just handed to me and I didn't have to do anything for it, what does it really mean? And not, I have to be careful. I'm always very mindful of the way that I phrase things, because they're always as I'm like words are coming out of my mouth, I'm thinking of exceptions or like, you
Sure.
know. So I mean, there are blessings that we're handed, right? And certainly those are amazing. Those are wonderful things, that life hands us, that simply gives them to us. We didn't have to do anything to earn them or deserve them. And those are, I'm not saying that those are not perfect or without incredible value and worth, right? But what I mean is, like, as we go through our journey in life and we have goals and ambitions and desires. I mean, just one example off the top of my head was, you know, the relationship that I have with my wife. Um, Prior to meeting her, as many people do, maybe most people, I would imagine, I went through plenty of suffering in terms of my relationship life and trying to find a partner. Uh, and those experiences, and believe me, they were not pleasant. Were they perfect? I don't know. They maybe they helped me perfectly appreciate what I have now. So again, it's subjective. It's in the eye of the beholder, and sometimes hindsight allows us access to viewing things as perfect as they are or were, when we can't necessarily see it that way in the moment.
Sure, absolutely. Well, I remember when my husband and I were trying to get pregnant with um my youngest son, and everybody sort of looked at us like, "Well, Karen, you already have a child, so, it should be easy." And it was like, "Yeah, but that was 13 years ago." Okay.
Mm.
And different husband and a lot of different things. My body has changed. And, I went through, 2 years of, thinking, oh, why me? Why is this happening? And then I got pregnant and just felt so blessed. And, um, just did everything what I thought was going to be perfect through the pregnancy. And then 2 weeks before he was born, um, my doctor said to me, if you don't have this baby soon, we're going to have to take him, because my blood pressure was like sky high. I didn't feel it. I felt
Mm.
great. And they just watched me, like to the nth degree. And they kept saying to me, this could cause a problem. Well, my son was born and everything was fine. And so, you think everything is perfect now. And again, that is subjective. Um, but at 6 years old, when they identified that he was on the autism spectrum, our world totally changed. Uh, people walked away from us, family sort of
Hmm.
accused us. You were a little too old to have a child, Karen. And so,
Wow.
and all these things. And I look back over those years and I think those weren't perfect years, but they were perfect because I learned to become stronger. Um, I learned to, block off things that a lot of people say. And I think that's important as we move forward into 2023, that I may think that you have some great words of wisdom, Eric, but it doesn't mean I have to listen to every single one. And that's what I want our listeners to understand too, that, words of wisdom are great, but they may not be for you.
Yeah, take it if it's helpful, and if not, find something else that is, you know? One thought that I had just while you were talking is this idea of when you said that, you know, you had a healthy baby and that you felt now everything's perfect. Um, what's so interesting is I think we often tell ourselves, and I say we because I certainly am not no exception. We tell ourselves, once this happens, once I get to this milestone, once I accomplish this goal, you know, once I solve this problem, no more worries. That's just not life. It's just
Yeah,
not, right? I mean, it's yes, like do those things, like go after what you want, seek relief from your, you know, what's ailing you or what's troubling you, you know, find solutions, make your life better. All of those things, yes, to all of them. But I think it's hopelessly naive of us to believe, and you know, like a common one is like, you know, sort of universal wish is like to win the lottery, right? That people think, oh, and you know, basically what that means is like independent wealth, right? Like to no longer have to worry about money. I mean, that to most people, myself included, sounds like heaven on earth.
sure.
But you look at people who have that, and there's a fascinating documentary I saw some years ago called I think it was called Lucky, and it was actually about lottery winners, and it followed lottery winners. It followed them in their lives post winning the lottery, and it was absolutely fascinating because the people's experiences really ran the gamut. And some people, it ruined their lives.
Right.
Not everyone, but in other cases, it gave them new problems, different problems, but problems nonetheless. And
Sure.
so I just say this as much to myself as to anyone else listening as a reminder that yes, like again, pursue those things that are important to you and go after those things that you believe will make you feel better about yourself and your life and make you proud of yourself and give you a sense of accomplishment and just make you feel do all of those things. But don't if you can be mindful about delaying your own um, peace of mind or contentment or happiness to some don't you know if you constantly are putting that off to some future, making it dependent upon some future outcome that may or may not occur, like then you're missing the moment. And believe me, I'm saying this, I'm not just I'm not like just saying words here. This is for me too, big time. Like to remember to just appreciate the moment. The moment is here and then it's gone, you know? And these things are not mutually exclusive, having goals and ambitions and desires, and also being grateful and appreciative of this very moment. Because you know, we don't want to indefinitely punt our own well-being and happiness to the future and never experience it. So it comes in moments, you know, there's like just moments of connection and enjoying an experience. You don't have to have all of your problems solved, you know, um, but just appreciating what the gift of the moment. That's why, you know, they call it the present, as
Right.
they say.
Well, you know how little kids are, when they get in trouble with mom and dad, they'll stand there with their hands on their hips and say, I can't wait till I'm grown up. Well, what does that mean, grown up? And I remember doing it. I remember even as a teenager saying to my parents, I can't wait till I'm on my own. And it was like, oh my God, I got on my own and I really wasn't. I was dependent on, you know, my husband at the time and to some degree, even our parents, because we were young. We didn't know what we really needed to know. Um, and so we kept saying, well, this will get better once he graduates with his degree. And like you said, we kept putting it off. That's when it's going to get better. And that's when this is going to happen. And it's taken me a good portion of my life to finally say, whoa, okay, what is there about right now that I can appreciate? And I sometimes find myself in the middle of either a podcast or at work on the weekends where I'll look around and think to myself, you know what? I'm able to do this. I've got the
Mm.
skills. Um, I like being around people and I'm out and about, you know, and 10, 15 years ago, I wouldn't have done that. I That just wasn't me. But now I want to appreciate it because, I don't know what's going to happen in the next minute that
Hmm.
could take it away.
Yeah, and I think it's a practice. It's something you have to be deliberate about, intentional about, because if you're not, then you'll just get swept away by the habitual ways of being and thinking about things. And so it takes a certain amount of effort and practice, and I could use a lot more practice. In fact, just as we're speaking, it's I'm thinking, as we look at uh the new year is such an interesting, it's psychologically so significant. It's just another day, right? It's just
Right. Exactly.
but it has a lot of psychological significance to us when we're starting a new calendar year, for a number of reasons, I think. And when I look at, how I would like to be in the coming year, I really want to live by those words that I was just saying, um, much more often. I still have goals and things I want to do, and ambitions and all that. And that's great. But I really want to make a concerted effort at enjoying the ride, you know?
Yep.
Uh,
And then that's
each day,
important.
like taking a moment and just really just enjoying whatever experience. I mean, I'm not saying I'm going to enjoy painful things necessarily. uh, there's something to get out of them. I mean, they're not like you can utilize them in some fashion, you know. But the experiencing, no one likes to experience pain, and I'm certainly no exception to that. But certainly when you're experiencing something good, like just connecting with you right now and having this conversation, like if this isn't nice, what is, right? Um,
Exactly.
so it's those moments, just really like kind of coming into yourself, and when you're in a moment of, enjoying a meal or hanging out with a friend or watching a movie that you're really loving, or, anything, like it doesn't have to be anything big, but just being where you are and appreciating it. And not constantly, churning in your head about what you're going to do next. And this is not easy, because it's our conditioned way of being, and it's so those pathways have been so reinforced. And so that's why I say I think it takes effort and practice, but it's something I am working on and want to get better
W-
at.
Well, it's interesting when my husband started his radiation treatment. Um, they put it on a timeline and they said, 5 days a week for 9 weeks, and this is the day you're going to be done. And this is the day you get to ring the bell. And, you know, I, I was looking at that, that's all I could see. And, one day my husband said to me, today's a good day. Why are you waiting for 9 weeks? And I sort of looked at him and I said, well, because it will be over. He goes, we don't know that, and it should be. And, I'm hopeful, but today's a good day. So can you see me
Wise man,
today? You
wise
know?
man.
And I
Yeah,
just looked
right.
at him and I was like, well, yeah, I can see you for who you are right now. He goes, then good. We don't have to. And I was the one who was counting down the weeks, oh, you
Mhm,
finished 1 week. And I know the doctors do it too, but it was sort of getting to him that I was doing it.
mm,
And he finally explained to me that, you know, what he's going through is not painful. There are some side effects that he's not crazy about, but he's not in pain. And
mm.
he just wants to live each day and be acknowledged. And it took me probably 6 weeks to get to
Wow.
that point of saying, okay, I get it. And I think it's like you said, we just keep looking at the future. And if you keep looking at the future, then we don't open up today's present and we're missing
Yeah.
something.
Hmm. I think it comes from, in part, fear, you know. That's one of the motivators. And also I think that there's this like sense of not enoughness. Things are not good enough, perfect enough. They're not enough, and we're not enough as it is, and as things stand. But once this happens, once we get to this point, we tell ourselves, then we'll be enough, then we'll have enough, then everything will be perfect. And I mean, it's just, I mean, look at your, like, I ask you to examine your own, like, patterns in life. And do you not do this? I do it. Like, I mean,
Absolutely.
I think most of us do it, so, I'm just pointing it out because it's uh it's a it really, I think it can take over your experience of living, and you're missing, if it we do it because we're trying to, have control, which we don't have.
That's for sure.
I mean, we certainly don't have absolute control. All right. We have control over certain things, and that's it. And we should utilize that control by all means. I'm a big proponent of that, like using the agency that you have. But part of using the agency you have is recognizing that there just is so much that you don't control, and so you have to respond to in a productive and helpful way. You have to roll with things. You have to adjust and adapt. And sometimes it requires you to become stronger, more resilient,
Yep.
But yeah, I think this is a fascinating conversation and topic, and I don't think it's really necessarily what we planned on talking about, but to me, it just feels so relevant.
Well, I know for myself, I've always compared myself to everybody else. And that's part of that, well, when I can look more like her, when I can get that job more like that person, when I can furnish my house like somebody else, um, it's like, but where am I in that? Okay.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to furnish it like my neighbor because I like her style. Um, I want to go out to the same places to eat that my friends do, not because I like the food, but because they go there and it must be good because they say so. And when I think about that, it's like, wait a second, what about the things that I do? And, it's taking me a good portion of my life to finally say, I don't have to be like everybody else. Just because everybody else
How
likes,
boring would that be?
well, exactly, exactly. But I can't tell you how many times I'd say to my husband, gosh, we're not invited by our friends to go out to a Vietnamese restaurant. He goes, yeah, I'm glad we're not because we don't like Vietnamese food. We've tried it. We don't like it. And our friends know it. And it's like, oh, yeah, you're right. Okay. But I would be feeling badly because we
Yeah,
were left out. But
sure.
once you see the reality of it, it's like you can almost laugh about it because, yeah, why would somebody invite
It
me?
reminds me, it's sort of I think it's a fairly universal experience that we don't like to be rejected. We don't like to be um, not invited to things. And the hilarious part of it is, it's like, even if we don't want the thing,
We want to be
like,
included.
yeah, if it's a very, very interesting, I think, human phenomenon is, like, you get turned down for a job or by someone, let's say, for a date or whatever it is, and you didn't even want the thing. Like you didn't, but the moment that you're turned down for it or rejected, suddenly you're like feeling all bad about it and like, oh, like, it hurts, right? And then you really have to kind of just ask yourself, you didn't really want that job, right? Like that's so why are you taking that as, but there's something in us. I'm sure it's hardwired that, we're social animals and we want to be included. We want to be part of the tribe. So yeah, it's just kind of interesting to have those experiences
And,
and
you just took me back quite a few years when you made that comment because, my senior year in high school, um, I was dating somebody, but he had already asked somebody else out for New Year's. And so he apologized to me. He said, I had already asked her out. It would not be polite of me not to take her out, which my head sort of got confused about that. We're dating now. But, anyways, and then this other person asked me out who I did not care for at all, did not want to be seen with him. And I turned him down. And then all I did was cry on New Year's Eve because I was sitting home alone. And I love when I remember that because I realize that I was crying over something I really didn't want. And so why?
well, I
Why did I
mean, yeah,
waste
I
the
mean,
energy? Yeah.
yeah, I could argue that it's more complex than that. You were crying for something that you didn't have that you wanted. So, but
Well, that's true.
but
Yeah.
but yeah, but in terms of if you felt bad about having said no to someone, and then feeling bad about it, I mean, I don't know. Yeah, but these are things that we learn over and over again in our lives, and you know, ideally we do learn something and we get clearer about what matters to us, and one of the gifts of getting older, I think, assuming that we do learn things, is that hopefully we care less about what others think and we become more in touch with what matters to us and we focus on those things and I hopefully don't let that other stuff mess with us as much. Hopefully.
Well, and we get influenced so much by the media.
Oh my
Okay.
goodness. Social media, of course, is with, I mean, it's yeah, I really feel for kids who, like I'm, in of generation X. And so I grew up before the internet was a dominant presence in our lives. And I'm so grateful for that. Um, and I don't know, I think, for instance, being a teenager was, incredibly difficult enough without without social media, for example. and
Right.
and so now when you're watching, other people's curated lives of perfection, of the appearance of perfection, and everything else that goes along with social media, which I won't even go there. uh it just is, I think it just adds an incredible amount of um potential stress and for people comparing themselves and unfavorably, right, to
I
others,
mean,
and getting
I grew
just
up with,
distorted views.
yeah. I mean, I grew up with the TV media and,
Mhm.
the magazines. Um, but I didn't find it as, I mean, frustrating, I think I would say more than hurtful to me and my growing up years. Sure, I maybe wanted to look like, you know, Gidget and be able to go surfing, but okay, I don't live by the ocean and I'm not Gidget, so I'm not going to go surfing. Uh, those were the
It
things
didn't
that
it
sort of,
didn't haunt you.
right, no, didn't haunt me.
Yeah.
But today, working in the IT field, I cannot tell you how many parents um, come in and tell me how worried they are about their 5 and 6-year-olds
Mm.
who are on the internet. And my first comment is get them off the internet.
5
there
and
are
6.
plenty of games your kids can play that are not on the internet. And they'll look at me and they'll go, "Oh, my kid doesn't like that." Well, okay. There were a lot of things I didn't like when I was growing up either. And you know what? Um, in fact, I just had to deal with it. My parents
Well,
were
and
not
also
well.
they're not used to some, like they're, it's also a socialization thing, right? I mean, your generation, my generation, we interacted in person with each other.
Right.
And that seems to be a disappearing, not completely, but like, whoa, it's a dramatically different thing now. The norm is um, interacting via devices, even if people are in the same room, right? They'll have a conversation with each other by text. Like,
Yep.
wow. Wow.
Yeah, that used to be
I'm not
something
saying,
that
I don't want to come
yeah.
across as like Mr. Curmudgeon just because I'm 50 now. And, but and I certainly recognize the many amazing benefits of technology. It blows my mind, really. I mean, having this conversation with you, I'm in LA, you're in Cleveland. We don't have to leave our respective places. Now,
Right.
I'm not saying it's the same as meeting in person. It's not, but it's incredible what we can do and what technology affords us. And
Yep.
there are also downsides too.
I mean,
Yeah.
you are so right there that um, we have, it's like everything else in our life. We have to acknowledge the positive parts of it, but we also have to acknowledge what is negative about it so that we can improve upon that because there's just so much negativity that we see on a day-to-day basis. And, you know, it's interesting that because I do these podcasts, I tend to want to be more positive in my day-to-day life. My husband doesn't do this, and so he'll hear something on the news or he'll be listening to a podcast and he'll find something negative about it, and he just goes off on the negativity, and I'll go, "Whoa, whoa, let's talk about what's good about it." And, he'll sort of like look at me like, you know, "Did you just crawl out of the cabbage patch?" And it's like, "No, I didn't." But it's not all negative. Or we'll be watching the national news, and yes, it's not always the happiest news in the world, but, we can find the bits and pieces of good news that are on the national news. So
Yeah, and I'm a big advocate of being as uh, intentional as possible about the consumption of news, because the news is inherently distorted. The news, I don't know if we've talked about this. I've certainly talked about
yeah,
this with many people, but the news is a distorted picture of reality. It's not reality. I mean, it's pieces of reality, and it tends
right.
to focus on the things that are the most shocking and appalling and outrageous, because that's what draws viewers and listeners and readers and whatnot. And that's why advertise, you know what I'm saying, like it's a whole thing.
Sure.
So the news is by design, extremely negatively biased. So the way I think of it is like, if aliens visited Earth for a day and they wanted to know what was going on, and if all they had if the only data point was what was on the news, they would think it was a horror show. And for many people and in many situations, it absolutely is, right? But it's not a complete picture of all of the things that are going on planet Earth on a given day, because most of the small acts of kindness and love and decency, those aren't quote unquote newsworthy. So they would never be on the radar, you know what I'm saying? But they're just as real
They
and
are.
abundant. You know what I'm saying? So I just like, yes, for me, there's a tension, because of course I want to stay informed. Of course I want to know what's going on, but I also know that beyond a certain point, and that point is not very much, by the way, it becomes counterproductive for me uh, to take in what the news offers. And so I work at it. I'm not, it's a work in progress, but I try to be deliberate about my consumption of it, and I try to put, you know, good limits on that so that it does not, there's a point at which who wants to drown in misery all day long? I mean, maybe some people do. I'm not one of those people. So it, and also you have to be aware of your own sensitivity. Some people are much more sensitive than others, and it affects them more. So, you just have to, I think it's important to be mindful about it. How much of your energy and time do you want to have, uh, just be mindful about what you're consuming is what I would say, whether it's food or whether it's, media, and and try to take in things that are nourishing and uplifting. You don't have to do that exclusively. You're allowed to have some junk food every now and then, and you're allowed to indulge in some, I don't know, you could call it junk, media or entertainment or whatever. But um, just know that it all is affecting you, and so take that into consideration is what I would suggest. Because
Well,
I do this for myself.
well, one of the things that I've been doing, and for those who follow me on Facebook, they may have seen it already. There is a family, a son and a father, who are the caretakers for the wife and mother, and it's they're living a beautiful story, but it's not perfect every day. But the son has been documenting every day just a little tidbit with his mother. And she is a beautiful heart woman. And I have fallen in love with her, but I've fallen in love with the fact that the family is treating her Alzheimer's as this is
Mm,
just part of life. And, we're not making fun of mom, but we're showing who mom is today. And I interviewed them yesterday.
mm,
And um, I'm that is what makes me feel good. I don't need to hear the statistics about Alzheimer's
mm,
or dementia. I think we all know it's happening, and it's it can be terrible, but it can also be beautiful when families come together, when we
mm.
treat people with compassion and kindness. Um, and the strange part about doing this story yesterday, last night on our nightly news, there was a story about a nursing home in our area that is not treating people fairly, nicely. And my head just like started to just swell. It was like, I don't understand this. It's like, here are these kind hearted people over here doing everything they can. And then you come over here and it's not going well. And all I ask of myself and others, if we can do one act of kindness every day, it doesn't have to be big. Okay. It can be opening a door for somebody, smiling at somebody. It can be um, like the people who were behind me at Starbucks the other day. I looked in my rearview mirror and this couple looked like they were arguing, and it was hurting my heart at that moment. And so I just said, I'm paying for them. And the girl said to me, "Oh, you are so nice because they lost their gift card and they were arguing with each other in the car." And I said, "Well, you don't even have to tell them who paid for it." I said, "I just hope they have a good day." And as I was pulling out and they started to pull out, they're honking their horn at me and they're waving and they're smiling. You know, it cost me
Yeah,
under $10, but you know what? I felt like I had given them $1,000,000.
that's
And,
awesome.
and when I made the offer, I had no idea what it was about. I just thought they were having a bad day with
Sure.
each other. So if we can do just one little thing every day,
Yeah, and it's such a great example, Karen. It's a beautiful story, and it's a great example of how a little thing, a little gesture, can really mean a lot. You know, I just watched actually yesterday an interview with Neil deGrasse Tyson. It was wonderful, wonderful interview. If you want to check it out, I don't have any qualms about promoting it. The show is called The Diary of a CEO, and the host Stephen Bartlett does just a phenomenal job on that show. I really admire the work that he does on that, and it's very consistently compelling and great content. So he had Neil deGrasse Tyson on, and um, towards the end of the interview, uh, the question came up, what makes him cry? What makes, you know, the way it was phrased initially was, when was the last time you cried? But, it got Neil deGrasse Tyson thinking about what are the things. He says, I cry often. And he says, and he was trying to articulate the things that, that are apt to move him to tears. And
Sure.
one of the things he said, which is, I thought of when you told your story, is unexpected acts of kindness. So kindness in a context where you're not expecting it.
Yep.
It's very touching. And people, if you're on the receiving end, people are often so startled and so taken aback because they're not expecting it. And it's what a lovely thing to do. And to your, I love, to your point, it doesn't have to be some grand or costly gesture. Just a simple act of kindness to a stranger who is not expecting it. What a
Exactly.
delightful thing. And of course, it fills your heart to do it.
Oh, the
But
whole day
what
I
a,
walked around feeling great.
yeah, that's awesome. Where can you get that for $10, right? I mean, so, yeah, I hope that people take that to heart, and I want to take that to heart as well, and remind myself of, the difference that it can make. Just the smallest act of kindness. Yeah, I mean, letting someone in front of you in line, how hard is that, right? Like, just little things that just generate, they demonstrate and generate goodwill, and they in the moment they raise people's spirits, give them a more sense, like a more positive outlook. And then they're going to take that with them into their next experience. So you don't even know the ripple effect that gesture you
Exactly.
made had, you know what I mean? But couldn't we use more of this? I mean, seriously. Oh my goodness. Like, so I love that. Thank you for sharing that.
Absolutely. Well, I want you to tell our listeners how they can continue to follow you, because you have a great podcast. Plus, you put out information continuously that makes me feel like, hey, I need to do more, but I don't, because I let you do it and I share it. So tell
Oh,
our
that's
listeners how they
lovely.
can find you.
Well, if you go to my website, it's just my name, ericteplitz.com. That will give you access to anything and everything you, might be interested in. And there's a lot of free content. There's an archive. My blog archive has well over 100 articles on it. And there's video content on there. I do have a course for sale that I'm extremely proud of, and it happens to be on sale actually through the end of this month at half price, which will not happen again for some time. So if that is at all of interest to you, take advantage of that offer. And I do one-on-one coaching, and I offer a free consultation call to anyone who is interested in that. And there's no pressure whatsoever to do anything more. If you want to, certainly you can sign up for coaching, but it's something I offer to anyone who wants to benefit from it. And I hope that people do, even if they never hear from them or see them again. Like, that's it's meaningful to me to do it. So, and I want to be of help. So yeah, I guess that's where people can go. And I should mention since you mentioned my podcast, I will plug that as well. It's called The Person
Absolutely.
You Want. It's called The Person You Want to Be. And this has been my first year doing it, and I've put a lot of myself into it, as I'm very, very proud of it. And I put out a season finale episode a couple weeks back, where I reviewed the year's worth of interviews that I did, and unlike you, Karen, it was a manageable number. So, but I went through the interviews, and I wanted to make sure that in this episode, each interview was represented. So I wanted to pull a meaningful clip from each one. And as I was doing that, I noticed some common threads and patterns that were very, that definitely caught my attention. And so I ended up organizing. It's not just random clips thrown together. It's organized in a meaningful fashion by categories of things that I noticed were common themes, that in people's stories of becoming the person they want to be. And so I'm super proud of that. So if you do nothing, if you do nothing else with the podcast, I would suggest starting with checking out that season finale episode, because it also will give you a taste of some of the people I've interviewed, and you might be very interested in either listening to more from them and checking out the rest of that interview, or even investigating and exploring who they are and what they do in the world. So yeah, that's about it, I
That
guess.
that sounds
ericteplitz.com. You can.
well. I do believe that we should follow you because, again, I get so much out of it. And I feel really excited when I share something and then, that person will come back to me and say, "Oh, wow, I'm so glad that you shared that with me." And it's like, I mean, that was real easy. It was just a click and share. So, um, let's all do just those little things. And 2023 may not be perfect, but it could
Let's
be
just say
really
from the
good.
get-go, it's not gonna be. And that's all right. Maybe that's perfect. I
It
don't know.
probably
What do
is.
I know? Again, it's about how you perceive it, and it's about what you do with it, what you make of it. And look, we have no idea what's coming. We never have known. We never have known. That's the
It's
thing.
true.
It just seems much more it just seems to be much more in our face in recent years how true that is. But it's always been true. I mean, life is completely uncertain. It's precious. It's finite. It's fragile. None of us knows what's going to happen. And so enjoy yourself, appreciate it, be kind, make the most of it, and laugh. Tell people you love them. I mean, this is what matters. Be nice.
Absolutely.
Do what Karen did, or do your own version of it, whatever you're moved to do. If you see someone who looks to be in some way agitated or unhappy, see if there's some little thing you can do that might brighten their day. And also think of, do things for yourself too. Brighten your own day,
Absolutely.
because it's gonna have a ripple effect as well. The If you feel taken care of, and if you feel good and you're in good spirits, then that's gonna serve everyone around you too. So don't forget that.
Well, again, I thank you for joining me today, and we will see you in 2023. Um, and we'll come up with something else to talk about. How do you like
I'm sure we will.
that? Take care.
Happy holidays. Happy New
Same
Year,
to
Karen.
you.
Thanks so much. I've enjoyed every conversation this year we've had together. So thank you.
Thank you. Talk to you soon. Bye bye now.
All right.